Lunch with a Lawyer for March of 2017. I'm Steve Richardson, and today we're going to talk about a terrific book called The Millionaire Next Door. Okay, I know this is in reverse for you looking at it. It's the nature of the front-facing camera of my iPhone, but Millionaire Next Door, great book, worth a read. At some point, I'm going to give a keyword in this show, and if you're the first one to email me with that magic word, I will send you a copy of the book. So, first one to reach out to me with the keyword I'm going to give you will get a free copy of the book. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk to you about this book and what it says. Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there about who the wealthy are in this country, who the millionaires are. And I think, first of all, that some facts about them would rather surprise you if you knew that. The first thing is most millionaires are first generation. 80% of America's millionaires, we're talking about individuals, not companies, households, millionaire households, 80% are first generation, and that means they made their millions. So the whole idea of the silver spoon, that wealth begets wealth, just doesn't pan out in the numbers according to the research done by these gentlemen. These are both PhDs in economics, Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko, and they've continually updated this book with continued research and interviewing many, many millionaires to find out how they became rich, how they became millionaires. That's what we're going to talk about today. 2/3 of them, 67%, are self-employed. So whatever that means as far as the ability to generate income or generate wealth, 2/3 of them are self-employed. Don't have to be to become a millionaire, but it's a significant factor. And there's what I call two different types of millionaires. You have income millionaires and you have asset millionaires. Income millionaires are just that. They make their households generate more than $1 million per year. And asset millionaires are millionaires in terms of assets, their net worth. So it might surprise you in that context that the average household taxable income of America's millionaires is $247,000. Now that's skewed upward somewhat by those earning between $500,000 and $1 million, which is 8% of the millionaires, and those earning over $1 million, which is 5%. But still, that means that 87% of Americans' millionaires make less than $500,000. The households do. And if you look at, that's the average household income, and of course, like, as I said, that skews, the average skews upwards because of the high income people. But the median taxable income, that is at the 50th percentile, half the millionaires make less and half the millionaires make more, it's $131,000. So the incomes are not the be-all and end-all of whether or not you can become the millionaire next door. And the median net worth of an asset millionaire, median net worth is $1.6 million. And millionaires also, most of their spouses are as conservative with money as they are. In fact, many are more conservative or more tight-fisted or whatever you want to call it with the money. So you're in it together if you're married. As far as, again, privilege or whether, again, against the whole silver spoon idea for Americans' millionaires, only 17% of America's millionaires ever attended private school. And I'm talking about up through high school, not college, but ever attended private school. Their annual income is less than 7% of their wealth. So again, they're not income millionaires. The fact that they're a millionaire doesn't come from their income or, as I said, inherited money. And on average, they invest nearly 20% of their household income annually. Now, again, that's an average. The bare minimum among millionaires is 15%. So, having a good idea of who's a millionaire and what constitutes a millionaire, give you an idea that what is wealth? Well, let's define our terms a little bit. What is wealth and how is it measured? We've talked about acquiring wealth and having the wealth of a millionaire. And what is wealthy? And how do you know if you are wealthy? Well, let's talk about that. First of all, wealth should be determined by net worth and not income. In other words, asset millionaires. And again, this is going by information in the book. So you have to look at what your total assets are, less inheritances. Again, it's what you've brought to the table, what you've generated. So all of your assets, less all liabilities, your mortgage balances, car loan balances, credit card debt, that sort of thing. And what is left over? What is your net worth? Well, look at that. See what it is. That's the first step. See, in your path to being a millionaire, or at least bringing it about, find out what your starting point is. And like anything else, if you set a goal, and I talked about this in January, in the Lunch for a Lawyer in January, about New Year's resolutions, it has to be, you have to set a goal, and it has to be a measurable goal. If you say, okay, I'm going to acquire wealth, and this ties into the whole idea of financial freedom, which I talk about in every episode of my podcast, the Financial Freedom Podcast. You are basically deferring gratification to a great extent in generating wealth and generating net worth so you can reach financial independence later on in life. And it takes time. Most millionaires are over the age of 50, so you need to look at that. But how do you know whether you've gotten there? Well, now, we've talked about net worth and calculating net worth, and so, okay, let's assume you've calculated that number. Well, that's where you are now, but where do you need to be? What is considered to be wealthy? Well, it's March. Hopefully you've prepared your tax return or soon, or will be preparing it soon. And when you do that, take a look at what your gross income is, okay? Not your taxable income after all your deductions and everything, but what is your gross income? Take that number and multiply it by your age. Then take that number and divide it by 10. That is what your net worth should be at this point in your life in order to be considered wealthy, according to these guys, according to this book. So, that is considered wealthy. Well, as I said, most millionaires in America are over 50 years of age, so it takes some time, and you can be considered wealthy, but not a millionaire. So that's sort of the two criteria that these guys look at, is in terms of being wealthy and being wealthy enough to be considered the millionaire next door. So that's your goal. So we have a starting point and we have an ending point, right, when you reach that. Now, you may have reached it. Remember, it's your annual income times your age divided by 10. So it's a continuum. It's a point along the path. So you're going to be increasing it. So many of you may be there already. If you're in your 30s or 40s or even 50s, you know that you're in the spot you're supposed to be at this point in your life. But you have to continue the process. And if your net worth is equal to that calculation, obviously you're doing something right, and you should continue on that path. If you're not there yet, if your net worth is not what that number is in calculating it, then you need to have some work to do. So what is it you need to do? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next, and that's what the book basically talks about. You look at the table of contents in the book, and there are all sorts of tables and data, and of course, these guys are scholars and researchers, and they provide you with the data and all sorts of very interesting information. But there are 8 chapters. The first one is more of an introduction, Meet the Millionaire Next Door. But the next 7 chapters basically go over the 7 factors, the 7 commonalities that they found in interviewing people and interviewing wealthy people. what makes them millionaires? How did they get to be there where they are? The number one thing, and this is the tough one, okay, well, several are tough, but this is where it's going to get tough. It's not easy to do, but it is doable and it is worth doing. And that is living well below your means, okay? We're in a consumer society. People like to spend money, have the latest gadget, things like that. But that's not what you need to be doing. You need to be living below your means. That means, are you a professional, or do you wear a suit to work or nice clothing? Millionaires, or people that become millionaires, buy their suits off the rack. Okay, no custom tailored stuff. Okay, no. When it comes to a watch, not a Breitling or a Rolex or anything like that. No expensive watches. They spend not a lot of money on things like that, on watches. They drive American-made cars, and a majority of those American-made cars are not the latest model. Okay, so you need to think about that. A majority buy, but don't lease their cars. I mean, you lease a car, you're making a monthly payment, and you get to the end of the lease, and you don't have a car. You have to turn it back in. People buy their cars, they make payments for a while, then they've paid it off, and they have a car. So they don't lease. A lot of them, what they'll do is, talking about leasing, is they'll go into the dealership and they'll look to buy a car that's come off a lease. Let's say somebody's leased a car for 2-3 years, all right, and they turn it in. Well, that car obviously is depreciated. They depreciate the minute you drive them off the lot. So those millionaires let somebody else take the depreciation hit. Okay, let it depreciate for a couple of years, 2-3 years, before you get it. We're in the world of certified pre-owned cars, so they come with warranties, they come with protection, and they're often just as good. And then they keep them for a while. So don't, when you spend your money, live below your means and get a vehicle that is going to have a lower payment, but not one that oftentimes it's cheaper to lease, but then again you don't get the car. So 97% of America's millionaires are homeowners, and they live in a home that has an average worth of $320,000. Well, clearly that's one reason why they're the millionaire next door. You never know it because they don't show it. They don't live in a McMansion. They don't live in a large home with a gate and a security, all of this. They live in a home that on average, as I said, has a value of $320,000. And about half of them have lived in it for more than 20 years. So they're not constantly, buying up, or they buy this home and they sell it and they buy it and they continue to buy up. They buy a home and they stay in it, okay? And they build in equity. And eventually, that mortgage gets paid off and they owe it outright. So now they have, that's part of their net worth, is a home worth on average of $320,000. And they have a household budget. And this is key. I've talked about this before in podcast episodes, in Lunch with a Lawyer before. I believe we touched on it in January with New Year's resolutions. So you got to have a budget. And you got to know what you spend on everything. And it takes time. It takes discipline. This isn't easy, but it is worth doing. So you know what you're spending, you keep an eye on it, because if you know what you're spending it on, you know whether you're spending too much or whether you need to cut back, whether you need to do a course correction. So have a budget, know what you spend on everything. And have financial goals. Again, this needs to be measurable. Okay, you need to know how much money you want to invest every year. The second point, the next chapter and the next factor in America's millionaires is that they allocate their time, energy, and money efficiently and in ways conducive to building wealth. Well, this is a fancy way of saying they work at it. They spend time looking into it. They have an investment portfolio. They have something with, with Vanguard, for example, which is, they have a lot of index funds that have very low, usually a no-load fund, usually low costs of maintenance because it follows the market, and they're investing. They're putting money aside towards retirement, and they're looking into what's a good investment. Where should I be putting my money? Where am I getting a return on investment? They watch their portfolios. They have accountants, and they talk to their accountants and say, what's the best tax benefit, and how should I handle it? So they allocate their time, energy, and money efficiently towards that goal. And they accept that financial independence is more important than displaying high social status. Okay, this is so key because they've realized that who cares whether they're keeping up with the Joneses? My buddy has a BMW. I've got to have a BMW too. That's not what's important. Okay, they don't have to live a certain lifestyle. Hey, I'm a successful businessman. I should look like it. I should wear tailored suits. I should drive this year's Acura. Nothing against Acura, just an example. It's not high social status. It's not the immediate gratification of how I look now. It's deferred gratification. It's knowing that rather, getting an American-made non-luxury car that's 2 or 3 years old and then keeping it for a while is better than because you are acquiring wealth and you are more assured of financial freedom and financial independence. That's what's important. That if you're, how many people can say if you stopped getting a paycheck, how long could you survive? How many years could you pay the bills? Is it at least 10 years? So that's what's important. So you need to look at that. The next thing is do not rely on financial help from your parents or give financial help to your grown, emancipated children. This is an important key thing. The authors call it economic outpatient care. And it's one reason why 80% of all millionaires are first generation. It doesn't, that they make it, but from their perspective, they oftentimes don't effectively pass it down to their children. Oftentimes, a lot of them will, they make the money and then they think, well, I want my kids to have better. So, they're out of the house, they're out working. Well, let me help you out. Let me give you your down payment on your house. I want you to have a nice home to live in and a nice car. And they give them that money, and that creates a codependency. People become dependent on it, and they don't discipline themselves. They don't look to their own budgets, their own cash flow, their own net worth, and look to build wealth on their own, to be frugal about it, not to live on it. One key thing that a lot of millionaires do value, and they may not give economic outpatient care to their emancipated children, but what they do and what they do believe is worth investing in is education. And giving their kids a good education, giving them, so that they have that opportunity, they have that training to get into a good job and generate the income that they need to become a millionaire. And just one note here, I just want to tell, there's some guy trying to find me here. He's saying it's not showing up on the Facebook page, on the business page. I want to make sure he has the opportunity to join in. Just give me a second here. Sorry about this interruption. Okay, so economic outpatient care, bad idea. Number 5 is raise your children to be economically self-sufficient. Well, that ties in with what I was talking about, that they have to be economically self-sufficient. They can't rely on you. They can't have the economic outpatient care that creates a problem for them, that creates the codependency. Number 6, be proficient in targeting marketing opportunities. Well, that goes back to allocating your time, energy, and money efficiently towards acquiring wealth. Look for, read, educate yourself, find out what might be a good investment and a long-term investment. Asset Millionaires, the Millionaire Next Door, they buy and hold. So this is long-term. So see good opportunities. This isn't be a day trader. This isn't trying to beat the market, things like that. But it's still about targeting those opportunities and acting on them. Take action. And there is some risk involved in that, but if you're in the market for the long term, you're usually still better off. And for that, I would certainly direct you to a financial planner, but I'm sure they'll tell you the same thing as well. And then finally, they talk about choosing the right occupation. Basically, that's one that tends to be highly profitable. Now, they talk about in that chapter that they're often asked by people, one big question is, what kind of jobs, and this is by journalists, things writing articles, they want comments from the experts, and they say, well, what kind of jobs do millionaires have? What jobs are great to have? And they say, well, it really doesn't work that way. A journalist may want to write, top 10 jobs to have if you want to be a millionaire. Well, that makes a great headline, and people may read it, and it's great clickbait for an online blog, but it doesn't really answer the question. And what you really go to, and what often makes the difference, and say 2/3 of all millionaires are self-employed, is it's certainly easier to reach your economic goals, to be a millionaire, and then once you become a millionaire, it's just a matter of scale, how many millions. But if you're running a business that's highly profitable, where you're not putting in a lot of hours, and millionaires work long hours, it's all about profit. So if you're involved in a business that has high overhead, okay, and you're working hard to pay the bills, and you're not seeing a huge profit, well, you can still acquire wealth, you can still become a millionaire, but it certainly is more difficult to do so if you're not running a highly profitable business. So those are the main chapters in the book. I would urge you to go out and buy it. Okay, it's worth reading. There's a lot more. I mean, I'm just trying to give you in a half-hour lunch video the highlights of these guys' research, and you can see it's over 240 pages. So there's a lot of information in here worth a read, but it certainly gives you a path, and it's very eye-opening in what is wealth and how it's acquired. So what these guys are telling you to do is to become prodigious accumulators of wealth, a PAW, a paw, and not an under-accumulator of wealth, a UAW. Nothing against United Auto Workers, please don't comment. It just happens to work out that way, but the under-accumulators of wealth do not become accumulators of wealth. And this guy's still having trouble finding me. Sorry. So, you want to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth. And if you are on track, going back to that calculation of having the right taking your total gross income from the previous year, multiplying it by your age and dividing by 10, where are you on that scale? If you are an accumulator of wealth, prodigious accumulator of wealth, you are at or above that number in your net worth and comparing it. So that means you're on the right track. And if you are under that, you are a UAW. So you need to make a course correction, follow these 7 principles in looking at, and definitely read the book and seeing what you can do to become the millionaire next door. Now, here's the key. Here's the secret word, and it is PAW, Prodigious Accumulator of Wealth. All right, P-A-W, all caps, P-A-W. The first one, to email me at steve@richardsonlawoffices.com with that secret word, PAW, with their complete mailing address. I'll send you a free copy of the book. Take a look at it, read it, and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. So, Dave, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's wrong that you aren't, that you're not seeing this or picking it up on my Facebook page. A guy named Dave Fries, great guy. And while I'm on the subject, sorry, Dave, you couldn't join us, but he does a terrific Facebook Live program every Sunday at 1 p.m. His program is called In Top Form. I urge you to go to his Facebook page, facebook.com/In Top Form. Like the page, you'll get information on his program. It's about a lot of good life hacks and things like that. Terrific stuff that you'll get out of it. Well worth it. You can either watch it live and interact with it as with here, or watch it later on video. And this will also be, speaking of later, this will certainly be available from my Facebook page, facebook.com/Richardson Law Offices, but would also be available later this week on my YouTube channel, richardsonlawoffices.tv. So, sorry couldn't join us, Dave. We'll have to talk offline later, find out what happened. But I hope you got something out of this and can get on a better path to financial independence and financial freedom. See you next month.